October 17th, 1940. A man walks into a room at the Air Ministry in London. He is 58 years old, quiet, precise, not the kind of man who smiles for photographs. 3 weeks earlier, he had done something no one in history had ever done. He had stopped a Nazi invasion before it even reached the beaches. He walks into that meeting expecting to talk tactics, expecting to explain how he won. Instead, he walks into an ambush. The men across the table have already made their minds. They don't want to hear about radar or fighter squadrons or how close Britain came to the abyss. They want him gone. By November, he's fired. His name is Hugh Dowding, and for the next 20 minutes, I want to tell you why the man who saved Britain is the man Britain chose to forget. Let's get one thing straight before we go any further. Hugh Dowding was not supposed to be the hero of this story. He wasn't dashing, he wasn't charming, he wasn't the square-jawed fighter ace you'd cast in a movie. If you'd asked the British military establishment in the 1930s, the best they could offer was competent, difficult, not particularly exciting. They had no idea at all that this awkward, humorless man was about to become the only thing standing between their country and total annihilation. Born in 1882 in a small Scottish town, the son of a schoolmaster, nothing about that childhood screams future saviour of the free world. He went to Winchester College, then to the Royal Military Academy at Woolwich, and then out into the world to do the quiet, forgettable work of a junior officer in the British Empire. Postings in Gibraltar, Hong Kong, India, the kind of career that fills a file, not a legend. But there was one thing about Dowding that set him apart, and it's the thing that would eventually save an entire nation. He had a mind for systems. In the early 1910s, aviation is barely a novelty, wood and canvas held together with wire and nerve. Most sensible officers keep their distance. Dowding becomes obsessed. There's just one problem. He doesn't have the money for flying lessons. So what does he do? He talks a flight school into teaching him on credit. No guarantee, no safety net, just his word that he'll pay it back somehow. He earns his pilot certificate after 2 hours of flight time. Sit with that for a second. 2 hours. And in those 2 hours is everything you need to know about who this man is. He does not wait for permission. He does not wait for funding. He sees what needs to be done and he finds a way to do it. Rules damned. That instinct puts him on a collision course during the First World War with a man named Hugh Trenchard, the so-called father of the RAF. Trenchard believes in offense, bombers, take the fight to the enemy, always, relentlessly. Dowding believes in defense. It sounds like a small disagreement. It is not. It is a philosophical fault line that will run underneath British military strategy for the next 30 years, and one day it will decide the fate of the free world. Dowding is blunt, reserved, so humorless that his own men give him a nickname, Stuffy. He isn't a politician, he isn't a networker. He genuinely believes that competence should speak for itself. In the British military of the 1920s and 30s, that belief is either wildly brave or wildly naive. 1930. Dowding is appointed to the Air Council, in charge of supply and research. On paper, this sounds like the dullest job in the entire Royal Air Force. A desk, some budgets, some paperwork. In reality, it might be the single most consequential appointment in 20th century military history. Because from that desk, Dowding does 2 things, just 2, and those 2 decisions are the reason you're not hearing this story in German. Thing number 1. At the time, almost the entire RAF leadership worshipped something called the bomber orthodoxy. It's less a strategy than a religion, the belief that the bomber will always get through, that the only path to victory is building bigger, heavier bombing fleets. Dowding looks at that religion and rejects it. While everyone else chases bombers, Dowding fights, and I mean fights, tooth and nail, against his own colleagues for something else entirely. Small, fast, single-seat fighter planes. Two of them specifically, the Supermarine Spitfire and the Hawker Hurricane. Without Dowding spending his own political capital, burning his own reputation, pushing against the establishment year after year, those two aircraft do not get built. Let that sink in. The planes that would win the Battle of Britain almost never existed at all.
Thing number 2, and this one is even bigger. Dowding funds radar. In the 1930s, radar is crude, inconsistent. Most senior officers see it as an expensive toy that barely works. Dowding sees something else. He sees the ability to detect enemy aircraft before they ever reach the English coast. Minutes of warning, maybe more. But here's what makes Dowding different from every other officer who liked the idea of radar. He understands that radar alone is worthless, because a signal on a screen means nothing if it doesn't reach a pilot's cockpit in time. So he builds something bigger, something no one had ever built before. It's called the Dowding system. Picture a living, breathing data network built before computers, before satellites, before any of the tools we take for granted today. Thousands of miles of telephone lines, radar stations dotting the coast, underground operations rooms where women from the Women's Auxiliary Air Force physically move wooden blocks across giant map tables, tracking enemy formations in near real time. It is, in every meaningful sense, the world's first integrated air defense network. And it turns raw, chaotic data into split-second life or death decisions. Now fast forward to 1940, the war has begun, and Dowding is the only senior officer in Britain who has staked his entire career on one radical idea, that fighter planes alone can stop a bombing offensive. In May 1940, France is collapsing, Nazi tanks are pouring through the Ardennes, and Churchill, desperate, watching an ally die in real time, demands that more British fighter squadrons be sent across the Channel to help. But Dowding knows, with a clarity that borders on prophecy, that France is already lost. He knows that sending more fighters won't save Paris. It will only strip away the last line of defense protecting Britain itself. So on May 16, 1940, Dowding does something almost no officer would dare to do. He writes a letter to the government, and in it he says, in words as close to a warning as military language allows, that if home defense is drained away, it will lead to the final, complete, and irremediable defeat of this country. It is blunt, it is terrifying, and it is exactly what nobody in that cabinet room wants to hear. But it works. The cabinet limits the deployments. Churchill never forgives him for it. Then comes the Battle of Britain. From July to October 1940, the Luftwaffe throws everything it has at southern England, wave after wave, airfield after airfield. And Dowding's strategy is ruthless in its precision. He does not throw his pilots, his chicks, as he calls them, into massive chaotic dogfights just to look impressive in the newspapers. He uses his system, his radar stations, his operations rooms to scramble squadrons at exactly the right moment. Not a second too early, not a second too late.
The Germans launch Eagle Day. An all-out effort to smash the RAF on the ground. The Dowding system holds. And then the Luftwaffe makes the single greatest mistake of the entire battle. Under pressure, frustrated, they shift their bombing campaign toward London. For Dowding, it is a gift disguised as a tragedy, because while London burns, his airfields get time to breathe, his ground crews repair the damage, his pilots get precious hours of rest they desperately need. By September 15, 1940, the Luftwaffe understands something they never expected to face. This is an air force that cannot be broken. The invasion is called off. Hugh Dowding has won. But here's the cruel twist in this story. While Dowding is winning the war in the skies, his rivals are winning the war in the corridors of power. It centers on something called the Big Wing controversy. Two officers, Trafford Leigh-Mallory and the famous Douglas Bader, argue that Britain should mass huge formations of fighters before engaging the enemy. Dowding, along with his most trusted commander, Keith Park, knows this is a mistake. The Big Wing takes too long to assemble. By the time all those fighters are finally airborne, the bombs have already fallen. But Leigh-Mallory has something Dowding never bothered to build, a direct line to the Air Ministry, friends in the right rooms. And so they organize that meeting. October 17, 1940. It is an ambush, dressed up as a debrief. Dowding, the man who just won the most important air battle in history, is cross-examined by men who spent that battle behind desks. He is accused, astonishingly, of being inflexible. By November 1940, he is removed from command. There's no retirement with honors, no parade. Instead, he's quietly shipped off to the United States on a face-saving mission to study aircraft production, a job that everyone, including the men who assigned it, knows he is completely unsuited for. He is deliberately denied the rank of Marshal of the Royal Air Force. Meanwhile, the men who replace him, men who achieved a fraction of what he did, receive that very rank. Even Winston Churchill, in his own memoirs, quietly rewrites the record to shrink Dowding's role in the victory he made possible. In his final years, Dowding turns to spiritualism, claiming he can speak with the spirits of the pilots who died under his command. Some people at the time saw that as a sad decline. Others saw it as something far more human. A man carrying the weight of 3,000 young lives, desperate to believe their deaths meant something. Hugh Dowding died in 1970. He built the shield that saved his country, and his country threw him away for the trouble. He once wrote to his pilots that the debt Britain owed them would only grow with time. He was right. That debt has never really been paid. But maybe the least we can do, all these decades later, is tell the story properly. If this changed the way you think about the Battle of Britain, that's the whole point of telling it. Let me know in the comments which part of Dowding's story hit you hardest: the letter to Churchill, the ambush in October, or the ending nobody talks about. And if you want more stories about the people history tried to erase, you know what to do.